made that connection, I was like, oh, okay, so I am actually meant to like speak the deep things that I feel to whoever, to a group. Who knows what group it is? But I mean, you know me on Instagram, Light Space Collective. Like I'm trying to, yeah, figure out who that is.
Hi, I'm Ruby, and this is the Beautiful Podcast. Difficult placements in our birth charts are empty containers, vessels which once held diamonds. The truth of these aspects have been littered with shame, guilt, and the like. This is why the Beautiful Podcast seeks to uncover the mysteries and hidden jewels that have remained buried for far too long. Each aspect is a shining jewel in our apron that with some care can be seen and realized. So I'm very fortunate. Today I'm here speaking with Brielle Baker. She's an astrologer. And we're going to be speaking about a really interesting aspect. So she's got a quincunx happening. And a quincunx is just another word for inconjunct. I kind of prefer that word because it's a bit more like specific. Apparently in astrology, inconjunct can refer to like some other things as well. So, you know, it is what it is. But her ascendant is in Scorpio rising. We've got Pluto in the first house as well. I think it's like an eight degrees away from the ascendant. So it's not the closest of conjunctions, but it's there. And that Scorpio ascendant is quincunx or inconjunct to her Mars in the 8th house. And that's by whole signs. It's in the 7th house if we were looking at Placidus. And Mars is in the sign of Gemini. Now, even more interesting is that Brielle has a Yod happening. So it's like Mars ascendant, and then Mars is the apex planet, and we've got another Yod to Uranus in like the 3rd house, 2nd house if it's Placidus. And then she's got this lovely sextile between Uranus and the ascendant. And then she's got like 3 other quincunxes in her chart. So she understands what it is to have a quincunx, to have an inconjunct. So I'm really happy I get to be speaking with you today. How are you today, Brielle?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I was watching a video. I really like this astrologer. Have you ever watched one of Jules' videos on a YouTube? She,
No.
it's a truth in aspect astrology, like, but it's
Cool.
like her videos, most of them are like old school YouTube vibes, like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, you know.
Uh-huh.
And she has like so many of them on all these different aspects, and she likes to focus on synastry. So, you know, like Jewel, you know, like I often reference her, you know, to find out about different things. But so I was watching a video and she was speaking about inconjuncts between the ascendant and like another planet. And it was interesting because she was talking about how like the other planet, so let's say in this case Mars, whatever that planet is, it's typically something that wasn't like maybe the child didn't feel that they could safely express. It felt like something that they kind of had to, like they kind of knew it was there, but it wasn't something that was acceptable in a way in terms of the early childhood environment. So for Jewel, she said, you know, from birth to let's say age 7, you know, when we're kind of formulating how we're going to be moving about the world, how we want to come off to people. You know, so it's like it can be something that's kind of maybe the child feels like it's embarrassing or just some kind of awkward relationship with it. And then I was reflecting on my own birth chart because I've got Saturn in the 1st house, sometimes the 2nd if we were looking at it whole signs, but you know, it's there. And so I've got an inconjunct, a quincunx to my sun, and my sun's in like, I should know this, the 7th house, sometimes the 6th, sometimes the 7th. And so when she was saying that, I was kind of asking myself, like, true? You know, because like growing up, I feel like I was really rowdy and kind of angry. I got Saturn in Aries, and it's like intercepted, like it's a wild time, okay? So growing up as a kid, there was just so much suppression happening. but I felt like I had to suppress that kind of rage. And I don't know where, well, I don't exactly know where it came from. I know for me, I believe in reincarnation. So, like past lifetimes,
Mhm.
um, when I don't know, something. Anyways, so that rage would come out, but I was like, I have no friends. You know how kids think, right? You're like, dang, I gotta change something. So I put on this Piscean kind of mask, very dreamy, very watery, very mutable. Whatever the other person would say kind of goes, hey man, I'm down, I'm cool, like I'm chill. And so all of a sudden I had friends growing up, it was like nothing to something. And then I kind of suppressed that sun, that expression of who I am, my identity, so that I could triumph in it. So this is my long diatribe, but I thought it was interesting considering what we're discussing. And so I was kind of wondering about you with your like Pluto vibes, Scorpio, to your Mars in the eighth, that relationship in early childhood, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate for me. When I think of, and again, there are so many different interpretations of Mars in the eighth and even Mars in Gemini. Um, but like at its essence, I think of Mars as the planet of assertion, like how I go after what I want. Um, and the eighth house, I think of that as the more like mystical, otherworldly.
Mm.
Um, and yes, there's like the death, sex, and taxes. But yeah, when I was younger, I grew up, my family is Christian. Growing up, we went to church. Um, and I was always, this may be related, maybe not. Um, I was always fascinated with, yes, astrology and like, I want to say the occult, but even a weird fascination with death and
Mm.
um, like atrocities in the world. I
Mm.
feel like that was like a big thing for me, and like injustice. I felt very, very impacted by that. And not being able to fully put words to it or even find a place to express it. It was more just like this inner fascination, like a private fascination that, yeah, I didn't know. I also didn't feel like I needed to express it when I was younger, but
Mm. Mm.
yeah,
Wow. Behind closed
fully,
doors.
I never fully thought that through until just now. But yeah, that is how I would say it came up in my childhood.
I'm thinking about the other quincunx that we're discussing kind of today. The Mars in the eighth to the Uranus in the second/third house. And it's interesting because one of the words you used was injustices. I mean, it is a very Mars in the eighth thing when I think about that, because eighth house is like crises, life or death, and having Mars there, so much energy and willpower and gusto, makes sense to me that, you know, there would be that feeling of passion and wanting to understand what's going on in the world. But it also reminds me of Uranus. And I think I'm kind of feeling these vibes because I've got a Mars Uranus opposition. So I think I'm kind of relating to you a little bit, you know? Um, so then, like, that's like what, second house, third house Uranus. Um, like when you would, I don't know, maybe like when you would be with siblings, when you would go to school, like, did you find there was some sort of outlet for that kind of wacky, zany Uranus kind of feeling that was
Mhm.
coming up?
Yeah, in two different two different ways. Again, like it's interesting what comes up in the moment. Um, School was an interesting outlet for me when it came to my self-expression. I used to wear the strangest things. I used to go to school wearing tutus and
Oh,
tiaras and like what? So I feel like I expressed myself in what I wore, which was very
mm,
victim. But also in terms of the atrocities, I was actually just talking to my mom about this the other day. We had a senior project where we had to pick any topic, that anything under the sun, and we had to create a presentation. We had to stand up in front of a panel of teachers and we had to present on it. And I chose child soldiers in Africa. Back in the day, Invisible Children was a nonprofit that was really popular, or at least in my world, I felt like it was big. Yeah, and some of the pictures that I chose for my PowerPoint presentation, I was like, wow, they were probably like, what is going on with this girl? Like,
Who
this
is
is
this
really
child?
intense. Yeah, meanwhile, my friends presented on like Disney World.
Oh.
But in the moment, I mean, I am passionate. I am a very passionate person when I'm like feel pulled or feel called. And I felt like extremely called to that and like bringing voice to that, even though it was just to a panel of teachers.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Okay. So if a client had a quincunx between their ascendant and Mars somewhere in their chart, so it's going to be either, sixth or like eighth house vibes, right? Okay. Yeah. If they had a quincunx between their ascendant and let's say Mars in the eighth house, what would you say? What would you tell them about it?
Yeah, so when I think of an inconjunct aspect, I also think of the words incongruent or the image of like your blind spot. So you're driving and like you just can't see it. It's not in your rear view mirror. It's not on the side. You just can't see it. And Mars is your capacity to initiate in whatever house it is, whatever sign it is, your capacity to initiate. And for me specifically, it's as it relates to my inner world. So it's a piece of you or two pieces of you that are just missing each other. It takes intentional focus and work and awareness to be able to integrate the two and use them to their fullest potential.
So you feel like it's possible to integrate two elements of a quincunx?
I think that it takes work and will always be work. And in my opinion, at least so far, it will never be natural. Or I hate saying never, but for me, it's so far always taken thought. And like I always default to my ascendant. Like your ascendant is up here. And
Has like
then
the biggest orbit, biggest gravitational pull.
yes. Yeah. So whatever that other inconjunct planet is, in my case Mars, it's easy to lose it or let it fall by the wayside.
Okay.
What's your experience?
Oh, yeah. What is my experience? It's just a weird vibe, you know? You just, or I can't, it feels like I just can't like grasp it. It feels like I can't understand myself, like, because it's weird too, because it's like, so for instance, I spoke a little bit with Sun Saturn, but I also have Moon and the North Node. And right, so it's like when I first looked at it, I was like, somehow I feel like this is cute. Like I was just happy to see that that was there. I don't know how to explain. I was like, wow, that's cute. But then like when I started to try and think about it, how they work, I just couldn't really get it because I was like, well, when I think about the moon and the north node, they're both so much about how I feel and what feels right, intuitively, what I'm moving towards. I was like, I don't really see how there could be friction. But then with my meditation practice, I could start to see where that friction was because the moon, is all about habits
Mhm.
I have a lot of Cancer energy. I've got Mars, Venus conjunct like 2 degrees in Cancer. Venus is at like Scorpio's degree. Um, and then, anyways, I have Moon on the Ascendant as well. And I've got like Neptune stuff happening because of the Pisces, but also Neptune itself, some of the aspects that are being made. Anywho, so when I would like meditate, that became a big way for me to kind of see how everything was playing out because I would have really lovely experiences. But then it's like, even now to this day, I'm still working on this. I would kind of put myself on lock. Like I would only let myself get to a certain, I don't want to say level, it's not a level, but a certain like depth, I guess we could say, in what I'm experiencing. And then I just stop. And it's weird. I'm like, turn back on. What's
Come
going on? Come
on.
back. But my feelings, which I'm still quite a bit separated from, but I'm working on, you know, harmony. They're just like, it's not even like they say no. It's just done. I'm like, what's going on? But then when I think about my North Node, it's in Libra. Libra's ruled by Venus. It's about love, and it's about love and relationships. And for me in my practice, meditation is all about building relationship with myself and with God. So it's just relationship heavy. And how do we build relationships? Through virtues, because virtues are all about love. So I'm like, feelings, because it feels like North Node wants that for me. It's in the seventh house too, sometimes the eighth though, but either way, it's a relationship house. And like the moon's like, no, that's fine. And she just won't budge. She's in the 12th house. She's doing her own thing. She's in Pisces. She's escaping. So it's just weird. So that's my long-winded way of it just feels weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting how you described it as just stopping. And that's where it's like when I said I don't like to say always or never, and it's like it's like built in, what are they called? Like a built-in, like it doesn't let you go past a certain speed
Oh,
when you're
okay, I feel you.
whatever that is.
Like a factory setting that
Yeah.
is preset. You just don't know how to fix the darn thing. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I
Yeah,
totally see you.
you get me.
I know. I'm like seeing that. I'm like, wow, like vibes, I'm like, okay, true. And I mean, I also find it really interesting that you would even use like a car kind of analogy or metaphor, whatever the word is, because it's like Mars and Gemini. So I'm like, oh, look at that. That's so cute. Yeah.
Yeah, that is funny.
Okay. So something else that I kind of I noticed, I think I already shared it actually before we started our discussion proper, but like just relating back to what you were saying about like child soldiers and some of like the things you're interested in and still are. Um, when I was thinking about the aspects in your chart, there was such a feeling about yeah, like this like child ruler kind of vibe. Yeah, it was interesting. Uh, my an astro when I took an astrology course, and the teacher was explaining how it was either she was either speaking about the sign of Leo or the sign of Sag, but I feel like it probably works for both. So let's just choose Leo because you've got Jupiter in Leo. I was looking at where that Jupiter is, and it's in the decan of Sagittarius. And my teacher was saying how when you have that kind of sign decan kind of thing happening with Leo and Sagittarius, it can speak of like child king or child ruler. It gives that kind of vibe. And that's kind of the vibe that I pick up from you. And even from the stories that you're sharing, like it feels like, and even with Mars and Gemini feels like such a youthful energy. You feel very much like a kid in a very lovely way, by the way. very sweet way. I don't want to offend people out here. Sometimes when I say things, I'm like, oh no, that's not what I meant. But like, like there's this beautiful childlikeness, But then it's
Mhm.
like Mars and Gemini's in the eighth house. There's this depth, there's this kind of wisdom. And it's like I kept seeing it in different aspects in your birth chart. And then even with the stories that you're sharing, it just feels like child ruler. And then I started painting this Arthurian kind of like tale in my mind, like it just feels so interesting that way. The young princess who has to become the queen, but she doesn't know if she's ready. And, it's like a TV series, it's set in like the 18, or maybe the 1600s or something. So,
I am all about that with the South Node in Leo. I'm like,
ooh,
past life.
say what? Say word.
So fun.
Okay.
And yeah, that is a great way to like encapsulate who I am. There's very much just like I don't take things too seriously, but then when I take them seriously, it's like, mm-mm. And
Mm.
then there is, yeah, that interesting depth or interest in deep things, but also like keeping it light.
Mhm.
Like,
Awesome, awesome.
thank you for
No,
sharing that.
no, yeah, of course. Like I'm just having fun over here. Like it's just interesting.
Mm.
Uh, and I was gonna say one other thing too, not to harp on this too long, but it's also kind of interesting too with the inconjunct being between Scorpio and Gemini, because Gemini is so youthful and social butterfly. And then we've got Scorpio, which is different, as we know, very different from that vibe. And then again, Mars, kind of youthful. It's kind of in your face. It's like, well, this is just what it is. And when we think about Aries, at least. And then Pluto being all about control and not really going to tell you too much because Pluto doesn't want to speak too much because Pluto has its own desires and ambitions and long-term goals. And it's got its emotions and feelings under wrap. It's like Mars doesn't, generally speaking, when we think about the expression of that planet. Okay, so then that's another question. Like, I mean, are you someone, especially with all your Virgo stuff and your Capricorn stuff, you must be someone who's like really in control of your emotions and your sentimentality. Um, if that's true, is there a side of you that enjoys being like blah, like Mars and just speaking off the cuff, etc.?
Yeah, it's so funny because my chart screams self-control. And no, when it comes to my emotions, not at all. Not at all.
Mhm.
I cry all the time at the drop of a hat. I don't know if you heard me earlier. I was starting to get choked up talking about the my presentation and like how passionate I was about it. I am so emotional. And my moon is in Cancer at 0 degrees. So I have water in my chart, not a ton, but I feel like it's all the things that matter when it comes to emotions. Um, so yeah, I've also been on a journey and why astrology has been so monumental in like my personal development and like allowing me to be my most authentic self is realizing that it's okay that I am that. And are there things that I could do to kind of like support balancing out my emotionalness? Yes, in certain situations, but the fact that I'm passionate and it comes out through emotion is who I am. So, one of those interesting things.
Okay.
Did I just throw you for a loop with that one?
You did, and then I caught a loop. I'm looking at the chart in my mind, just because you can just kind of remember a few things, right? And so so like, what's your experience with anger? So you are very emotional in terms of, like crying. I get it. Like I said, I got like all these placements in Cancer. I cried less than 24 hours ago. It's okay though. We're cool. I'm gonna just say, but Okay. So then, but what's your experience with anger? Do you feel like it's easy to express that for you? And has it always been easy to express it?
No. And I'm realizing that's where the inconjunct lies because I think of expressing anger, Mars. It's inconjunct my ascendant. So like who I am, how I'm feeling, that depth. And it's like just missing the mark of feeling like I'm able to express verbally express anger because Gemini, right, is communication. It's like verbal. And I know we talked about this pre-podcast, but my Mercury is retrograde. So there's also that extra like, oh, I don't know how to express what I'm feeling. I have a lot of
Mm,
feelings, but putting words to them, it's like, for whatever reason, not
mm,
the most natural to me
mm.
until it is. Like
Until it is. Wait, what
until
does
I
that
bubble
mean?
over, until I bubble
Okay.
over, and usually it
Okay.
comes out in like writing.
Oh, oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my God, so poetic. Um, I got two things in mind. I want to speak about this moon and the aspects that are happening with it, but Rubes, what was it? I was about to make a note because I was like, Ruby, you're gonna forget. And I just forgot what I wanted to ask you about. Ah, dang it. Um, yes. Okay, really quick. Um, so okay, yes. So you have so many 5-degree vibes in your chart, which is awesome. I was like, what? Super cool. And hey, it goes back to the whole rulership thing, like you were saying, South Node and Leo. We don't know what the past life was, but hey, you know. Um, and I found that interesting because it makes me think about the fifth house and performance.
Mm.
And it makes me think about that because of my own experience. Um, with my sun being in the fifth house, or, that's not true. Sun's in the sixth, seventh, but it's at 5 degrees of Virgo. Um, and when I look at my actual fifth house, that's where Cancer is. And like I was saying, I kind of started to hide behind this Piscean, watery moon. I'll reflect back whatever you throw at me kind of thing. And how actually my meditation teacher was the one who said, you got to look at performance. Like you perform, you got to look at that. So then I looked at my astrology chart, of course, because, that'll help me see what's going on. And I've just been just kind of looking at it, just yeah, maybe kind of trying to caress the that spot in the chart and try and feel it out and kind of see why I like to perform so much and all this kind of stuff, right? Okay, diatribe over. So when it comes to you, um, I'm performing right now, but it's okay. It's okay.
I
Uh,
love it.
so when it comes to you, like with that 5 degrees popping up, I mean, do you feel like maybe you do a lot of, or rather, what's your relationship with performance in your life, performing in, different relationships and whatever, wherever you may feel the need to do so, what have you?
Hmm. So, are you referring to performing as in literal performance? I'm thinking of like, oh, I grew up and I was a dancer and I was a competitive cheerleader and I was on stage. Or are you referring
Oh,
to like putting the mask on performance, like with in my life?
putting the mask on.
Yeah, I bless anybody who's listening to how vulnerable I'm getting right now. I am extremely self-conscious. So I feel like I'm always pushing myself to not be or to like move past that.
Mm.
And in order to like get past the self-consciousness, I feel like it requires putting on a performance to like, no, I can do this, or I
Mm.
can be this, or I can whatever it is.
Mhm,
So yeah.
mhm. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, I also have a lot of issues with self-consciousness. Um, Actually, when I was in high school, so, after my 7 or 8 year career of all this moon, hiding behind the moon and reflecting things back, um, because I was doing fake it till you make it, right? I really wanted to make myself into somebody that other people would want to be around. Because I was running away from all of that anger as a kid and how lonely I felt. I still felt lonely though when I was in high school. So then at a point, it's funny, I was actually in drama as well. I went to a high school specifically for performing arts. Yeah, and so uh, and I was doing very well. I loved to do improv and all this stuff, and I was super happy in a way. But there was also this feeling. It was like an existential loneliness or something. You know what I'm saying? Especially because of that mask, I was just so distant from myself. I think about the image of going back to the 1600s. There's a woman on the street, and you have maybe, it doesn't have to be a jester, but you have some sort of performer who wears a mask in order to entertain. And the woman is being entertained. Like, wow, that's awesome. And then once the performance is over, the transaction is made. She gives the coins, whatever it is. Okay, great. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Bye. Peace out. She walks away. And then the performer is still left standing there and they're alone and they have to take off their mask. And it's like the face looks like one thing, the face of the mask. But when the performer removes it, their actual face looks like something completely different, right? Um, and this actually reminds me of Gemini, which is very interesting. Um, that's very interesting. Right now, I'm going through a fourth house perfection. Is that the right word? I don't even know what's right. Okay, basically, yeah, right. Okay, yeah. Fourth house perfect. Yes. And it's in Gemini. And it's interesting because we're speaking about Mars and Gemini in the eighth house as well. Okay, a lot of like going off in different directions. So I'm gonna try and reel it back. But anyways, there's just this feeling of loneliness. And that's kind of how I felt in high school. And so I just kind of said, well, screw that. I'm going to take off the mask. This is annoying. And then I moved back into that Mars place. And funny enough, it was all about social justice, looking at all the injustices that are happening in the world and trying to bring that up to my friend group. But I'm a completely different person. Like, who the heck are you? We thought we befriended this person, and then it's like doing a complete 180. And then eventually I get into meditation and I start working with the moon and my feelings and accepting that, Cancerian energy is a big part of my life. Okay. I don't even know where the question is and all that. But what you said inspired it. I appreciate what you shared.
Where's
Self-consciousness, yes.
where you may have shared, where is Scorpio and or Pluto in your chart?
That's an interesting one. Two astrologers I've met, one who knows me quite well, they've been like, you really feel like you've got Scorpio in you. I thought, they're like, oh, I thought you were Scorpio sun, Scorpio moon, Scorpio whatever. But then when they would look at my chart, they'd be like, but where's the Scorpio? Obviously the sign is there, but there aren't really placements like that. So anyways, in terms of Scorpio, Scorpio is in my ninth house, depending on, house system. But Pluto is like, I should know this, 0 degrees. Yeah, because I'm the beginning of Pluto and Sag. I was born in 96, so yeah, cusp, kind of. But Pluto and Sag, and that is squaring my sun by 5 degrees. Which is interesting too, because Sun is at 5 degrees Virgo and it's squaring by 5 degrees. Okay. And then it's also squaring, the Pluto is squaring my moon by 8 degrees, I'm pretty certain. So that's kind of what Pluto's doing. Otherwise, I have sextiles. So Pluto's sextiling Uranus, Pluto's sextiling this, Pluto's sextiling that. But obviously, I have those two really strong squares happening as well.
So were you born on a full moon?
Heck yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
It's like a 1 Or I think it's a 1 degree orb between the sun and the moon. It's something really like
Um,
werewolfy.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that also adds that depth.
Uh,
And Pisces. I mean, yeah, Pisces, Scorpio. I feel like it's very similar vibes, just it's very similar, but also opposite. I feel like Pisces is
hmm.
very like ethereal, but also very deep, like very much a feeler in like the collective consciousness. And then I think of Scorpio as also very deep, but almost like the mysterious.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Brielle, you are making me think about um 12th house. Of course, it's not ruled by Pisces, but there are associations. And the same thing for the 8th house with Pluto and Scorpio. I don't know why, for whatever reason, I was like, oh, that's what it is. But now I don't remember why that's what it is.
Hmm.
I don't know why I thought that was a big deal.
What do you
It's
have?
a,
12. What
no.
do you have in your 12?
Oh, the moon. And that's interesting. And you've got sometimes moon in the ninth, but sometimes moon in the eighth. That's interesting. So there's a bit of an affinity, a trine happening between our moons by
Mhm.
sign. That's interesting.
That's why we're just going so deep.
Right? Right? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because it's like the 12th house, it feels like it's loss and confusion. It has that kind of depth. And the 8th house is more like kind of like the depth of like intensity, like immediate, urgent intensity. But they're both deep, but in different ways. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
I still want to talk about the moon, but we'll come back to that. Now I'm gonna
Sorry,
look
I
up.
think I took us on that tangent. Sorry.
That was a good, hey, that was a good one. And hey, I take us on so many tangents. It's only fair that you would also do the same. So I wouldn't have to live with the rap of doing all of that. But yes, so I'm gonna look up your name real quick. Actually, do you know what your name means, Brielle? Is that your full name?
That is my full name. At one point, it's French. I want to say
Mm.
something about a meadow, maybe.
Oh, that's sweet.
Meadow or a stream. I could be wrong.
Okay, so yeah, no, I'm not seeing anything about a meadow. But hey, maybe I'm just not at the right place.
Well, and this
Um,
was like probably 20 years ago when the name wasn't really popular. I'm sure someone has found a better. Um,
okay.
so we'll see. I'm interested to hear what you find.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I see it means heroine of God. That is,
Oh, dang. All right, I'll take that one.
you know, like, because first
Not what I
heroine, you're like,
remember.
but then of God, it's like just levels on this.
That's
So
hilarious.
it's Hebrew and or French, like you said, French, and it comes from Gabrielle.
Mhm.
So then I think about, Angel Gabriel. So there's probably some sort of connection there. Or it can mean God is my strength, God is my might, hero, strong woman. Um,
I'd like to find the people who made that definition.
I mean, that's the thing with these names too. Sometimes when I'm looking them up, I'm like, how do I know that that's what's actually? I mean, there's quantity, but is it always quality? We don't know. Um, but I mean, it's a beautiful meaning. I also see messenger of God. Um, and oh, okay. And then this one is speaking about because of course Gabrielle being feminine, Gabriel being the masculine. And so they're speaking about Gabriel in the Bible. God is my strength, hero of God. Name has significant meaning to those of the Christian faith because Gabriel is the angel in the Bible who tells Mary she will bear the Son of God, and so he becomes a messenger of God. Um, Wowzers. Uh, and that's cool too because you've got Gemini in the eighth. When I was speaking with Katrina about Mercury in the eighth, she was sharing about Hermes and how Hermes, you know, dude is just like traveling everywhere, giving everyone messages. And so she was saying how when someone has Mercury in the eighth, they can experience a lot of like downloads and, messages from here, there, everywhere. So underworld vibes, but also very, very beautiful vibes as well. And so it's interesting because when I think about Gemini in the eighth, I would definitely think about a messenger who's able to receive and experience messages from places above and beyond, like our regular old world. All right, so how do you feel, heroine?
Well, it's interesting because I have Mars in Gemini in the eighth. Ruler of Gemini is Mercury, and my Mercury is in the 11th house of community, the collective. So when I made that connection, I was like, oh, okay. So I am actually meant to like speak the deep things that I feel to whoever, to a group. Who knows what group it is? But I mean, you know me on Instagram, Light Space Collective. Like I'm trying to, figure out who that is, and people who decide to follow and listen, I'm trying to step into using my voice, being the messenger for whatever it is that needs to be unearthed.
I'm thinking about just as you said, Mercury in the 11th. You've got the sun there. You got a stellium. And Mercury being so close to the sun, that identity of messenger, as you said, you're working in being that, being a voice. Then it's cool because Venus is there, and so that makes me think about, I guess, a voice in relationships, a voice to maybe help people with their relationships. Interesting. That's interesting. I've got Libra in the 8th, and Mercury is in Libra. So there's that Mercury-Venus vibe. And you've got Mercury-Venus vibes in the 11th. I just find that interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting.
You have a great memory.
Yeah?
Oh,
Cancer. It's the Cancer.
Oh,
it's just
zero
the Cancer.
memory. So if I'm repeating myself, it's not there.
I mean, but it's also interesting, It's like your birth chart really is such a lovely story, because that's funny. And I don't usually see pictures with birth charts, but it's like with yours, there were like pictures that were coming alive, When I thought of Mars in the 8th, I was thinking about crises, someone who responds to crises. It's cool because, you're not only someone who, Mercury in the 8th for me, talking about these kind of things, right? Deep things, psychology and psychotherapist vibes. But for you, that's there because Gemini's there, but then you also have Mars there. So it's like applying it, using it in your will to move you towards whatever your aim is. And it's to benefit the collective. And then all these images about like you as like an Arthurian like princess finding her way. Like it's interesting. It was literally like all these tales being spun with just your chart. Like that's very, very cool. So that's helping me remember things because it's like, oh, that one was that picture and that one was that picture,
That's so neat.
Okay. Real quick. The moon. There was something you were saying about how now I'm gonna open up your chart actually. That'll help me here. But there was something, what were you were saying about how the feelings and how you can see that feelings are so important and vital in how you communicate and like who you are and embracing it. And I found that so interesting because with that lovely Yod that you have pointing at your with Mars as the apex planet. Um, it's so cool because it's like, so you see that triangle, and then like right next door is a different kind of triangle with the opposition from Uranus to the moon. And then you've got this trine from the moon to the ascendant, and then a square between the ascendant and wait, hold on. Oh no, sorry. No, sorry, that's sextile. It's a sextile. But opposition, trine from the moon to the ascendant, and then a sextile between the ascendant and Uranus. And I thought that was interesting because it feels like, because the yacht is supposed to be a really like uncomfortable thing to have going on in the chart, kind of pushing you towards that Mars apex. But it's interesting that it feels like, in a way, it's like you're channeling that energy to the moon. So, like, because of what you were saying about feeling more comfortable to kind of cry and recognize that that's part of who you are, but there's a bit of an uncomfortability with Mars. But it's like whatever that urge is that makes one or you know, want to cry, it would be the same thing that would make you want to get angry. But instead of getting angry, it's cool because like visually it looks like you've just shuffled it to the moon instead. So, I mean, I thought that was just kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is. And I've never looked at my chart in that way, because I always look at, yeah, I feel like I have a lot going on between those, my ascendant, Uranus, Mars, moon, because then I even have the Jupiter Mars sextile with Uranus.
Okay, so what are you thinking?
So it's like I have Uranus as the apex planet in that configuration.
Mm.
And then I also have the opposite, where Mars is the apex. So it's kind of, essentially, to summarize, everything is this, but it's also this, or it's this and this, or everything is contradictory but also works together.
Yeah.
So no answers, no full definitions. It's just interesting that a lot of my chart works with each other and also against itself.
I was thinking about that Jupiter and Leo, this vibe of being, there's just a feeling of being the learner, but also the teacher. And it's funny because you made that Instagram short this morning where you're like, do I look like a teacher? Like, oh God. I thought that's so funny. I was like, oh.
It's like I'm totally giving off teacher vibes. So that's funny that I'm living into that.